There comes a time, after the silence, after the distance, after the damage is done, when the weight of one's actions begins to speak louder than any excuse ever could. Betrayal is not just a moment. It's not a single choice. It is the slow unraveling of trust, the silent shattering of something sacred. And while the one who is betrayed often walks away carrying wounds, they also walk away with growth, strength, and clarity. But the one who betrayed, they carry something far more insidious, an invisible burden. At first they deny it, they rationalize, they distract, they run. But in the stillness of life, when the lights are off and no one is watching, the heart they broke begins to speak, and it speaks in a voice only they can hear. This is not just about broken promises. It's about the unavoidable consequence of harming what was pure, of treating loyalty like a weakness, of walking away thinking there would be no cost. But there is always a cost. And long after the betrayed have risen from the ashes, the betrayer finds themselves haunted, not by what they did, but by what they lost. The weight of conscience cannot be escaped. There's a truth we don't talk about enough. You can hide your actions from the world, but you can never hide from yourself. The person who betrays often believes they've gotten away with it. No consequences, no confrontation, no collapse. On the surface, it looks like they won. They walk away untouched, while the one they wounded bleeds internally. But that appearance is a lie, a temporary illusion built on borrowed time. Because even if no one else knows what they did, they do. And the mind never forgets. The soul doesn't delete its memory just because the world has moved on. There is no permanent escape from the self. Conscience is a persistent voice. Quiet, maybe, but relentless. It waits in the spaces between distraction. It speaks in the quiet hours of the night, in the middle of empty victories, in the pauses between relationships and routines. And when it speaks, it doesn't whisper. It accuses. The betrayer becomes their own judge, jury, and prison guard, not because someone forced them, but because the mind is wired for truth. And betrayal is a fracture against that wiring. It breaks something inwardly that can't be patched with denial. They'll try. Oh, they'll try. They'll tell themselves it wasn't that bad, that you deserved it, that it was just a phase, a mistake, a necessary choice. But these are just shields made of glass. Sooner or later, the impact of reality shatters them all. And what's left is a person staring into their own reflection and not liking what they see. You see, it's not the act of betrayal that haunts them most. It's the realization of who they became to commit it. That realization is slow. It creeps in like a fog. It starts when their new distractions don't satisfy them the way they thought they would. It deepens when moments of happiness are followed by unexpected waves of emptiness. And it explodes in those rare moments of silence when they remember your eyes, your trust, your love, and how they treated it like it was disposable. That's when the real haunting begins. Not with ghosts, not with punishment, but with self-awareness, with the sinking recognition that they broke something sacred, not just in you, but in themselves. And here's the truth most people avoid. You can rebuild a career, a reputation, even relationships. But once you betray someone who truly loved you, who gave you everything with an open hand and an honest heart, you fracture the very foundation of your own identity. And that kind of damage doesn't heal with time. It lingers, it festers, it waits, until the betrayer finally has to admit the person they hurt the most is the one in the mirror. So let the world believe they're fine. Let social media show the smiles. But understand this. the betrayer walks with a weight no one can see. And it gets heavier with every passing day. The weight of conscience, it doesn't go away. It waits, it whispers. And one day, it roars. The illusion of control fades with time. When someone betrays you, it often comes from a place of control, power. In that moment, they believe they hold the upper hand. They believe they're choosing you to lose and them to win. And they walk away with their head high, thinking they've gained something: freedom, dominance, attention, maybe even a new connection. But the truth is far more brutal. What they thought was power was only impulse. What they mistook for freedom was the beginning of their own imprisonment. You see, betrayal gives the illusion of control. It makes the betrayer feel untouchable, like they've risen above vulnerability, risen above consequence. But what they don't realize in that moment is this: time reveals everything. And time is not biased. It doesn't rush. It doesn't warn. It simply reveals. At first, their life may even seem to improve. New beginnings, new people, new paths. They might even flaunt it, as if you were the one who lost. But slowly, subtly, something shifts. And that illusion of control begins to slip bit by bit. And because real control isn't about walking away from something real. Real control is being able to stay, to build, to face discomfort with integrity. And when someone chooses betrayal, what they're actually doing is choosing the easier path. The path of escape, of avoidance, of self-interest dressed up as self-care. And life, it doesn't reward cowardice in the long run. Eventually, the things they chased begin to lose their shine. That new connection doesn't carry the same depth. That thrill they sought fades into routine. And the person they tried to become, the one who didn't need you, feels more like a stranger than a savior. This is what happens when the rush of betrayal wears off. They're left with silence, with time, with the full, unfiltered view of what they walked away from. And by then, it's too late. The illusion they used to justify their actions starts to fracture. They begin to see the cracks in their own narrative. They start to notice that their peace isn't real, that their confidence is brittle, that their reflection doesn't carry the same sense of self it used to, because the illusion was never real to begin with. It was a mask, a distraction, a temporary high. But time humbles everyone. Time strips away appearances and reveals character. And when it does, the betrayer finds themselves holding everything they thought they wanted and realizing none of it fills the space you once held. They thought they were in control. They thought they held the power. But time always tells the truth. And here's that truth. Betrayal doesn't elevate, it empties. It makes a person smaller, not stronger. It steals more from the betrayer than it ever takes from the one betrayed. Because the moment they walked away from love, from loyalty, from authenticity, they walked into a future built on a lie. And lies always collapse under the weight of time. So let them pretend, let them perform, let them chase. But know this: the illusion they lived in is cracking. And when it finally shatters, they'll be forced to face the one thing they never prepared for: the reality of what they lost and the truth of who they became. Pain transforms the betrayed. Guilt transforms the betrayer. There are two paths that unfold after betrayal, one paved by pain, the other by guilt. and they lead to very different destinations. When you are betrayed, you feel like your world has been pulled out from under you. The trust you built, the love you gave, the loyalty you carried, suddenly it's all shattered. And you're left standing in the debris, confused, heartbroken, and questioning everything. At first, that pain feels like it's going to destroy you. It cuts deep. You can't sleep. You can't eat. You can't think straight. Every memory becomes a trigger. Every silence feels louder. You feel abandoned, not just by the person, but by the life you thought you were building with them. But here's the paradox. Your pain, if you allow it, begins to purify you. Because pain is not just suffering, pain is transformation. It forces you to confront what you ignored. It brings hidden strength to the surface. It awakens a version of you that would have remained asleep if betrayal had never happened. In the furnace of heartbreak, something begins to forge inside you. A deeper wisdom, a sharper clarity, a resilience that cannot be shaken. You become stronger not in spite of the pain, but because of it. You start seeing who you are without the weight of pretending, without needing someone to validate your worth. And slowly, painfully, you rise. You stop begging for closure. You stop replaying the lies. You stop mourning the version of you that once needed their approval. And in that moment, you reclaim yourself. Now contrast that with the journey of the one who betrayed. They don't face fire right away. They escape it for a while. They feel free, relieved. They convince themselves they made the right call. They silence their conscience with distractions, new relationships, louder friends, busier schedules. But beneath all of that noise, guilt begins to grow. Guilt is subtle. It doesn't crash in like pain does. It drips, slowly, quietly, day after day, moment after moment. It starts as a faint unease, then turns into full-blown regret. And unlike pain, which refines you, guilt corrodes. Because guilt has a way of creeping into every corner of your life. It shows up in moments you don't expect, a familiar song, a phrase you used to say, a memory you buried but never erased. And suddenly, they're standing in the middle of a day that was going fine, and their chest tightens, their smile fades, their past catches up. They thought they were free, but they're not. They're trapped in a cycle of pretending. That guilt doesn't lead them to strength. It leads them to confusion, to denial, to late-night thoughts they can't shake, to relationships they can't fully commit to dreams where your face still appears, reminding them of what they broke and can never put back together. While your pain is leading you toward healing, their guilt is becoming a prison. And here's the most haunting part. You will transform into someone better. They will transform into someone they barely recognize. Because betrayal doesn't just damage relationships, it damages the betrayer's identity. They no longer see themselves as the person they once were. The shame they carry, the lies they told, the loyalty they threw away, it all becomes a silent story that follows them. They may not talk about it, they may never admit it, but they feel it deeply. Because the betrayed walks forward carrying scars, but the betrayer walks forward dragging chains. You grow stronger with each step you take away from them. They grow heavier with each memory they try to forget. So, don't envy their silence. Don't mistake their calm for peace. Don't think they got away untouched. They didn't. Because pain may shake your soul, but guilt eats it alive. Silence speaks loudest in the mind of the guilty. There's a lie we've been conditioned to believe, that if someone doesn't speak about what they did, they've forgotten. That if they're silent, they've moved on. that if they're not reaching out, they feel nothing. But silence isn't always peace. Sometimes silence is the loudest punishment of all. And no one understands this more than the one who is betrayed. Because the betrayed, they cry, they scream, they mourn. But the betrayer, they go quiet. Not because they're free from guilt, but because they're drowning in it. They say nothing because there's nothing they can say. In the aftermath of betrayal, it's easy to think the one who broke you has moved on. You see them online, smiling, laughing, posting, living. They look unbothered, like what they did didn't faze them, like you were just a page they turned, a chapter they finished, a mistake they've forgotten. But let me tell you the truth, nothing haunts a person more than the sound of their own silence. See, when someone betrays you, there's always a voice in their head telling them to justify it, to explain it away, to frame themselves as the victim, to rewrite history in a way that makes them feel okay with what they did. And at first that voice is loud. It comforts them. They tell themselves they had no choice, that you were difficult, that they were unhappy, that they were justified. But with time, that voice starts to break down, because lies can only hold for so long before they collapse under the weight of reality. And what's left after the excuses fade? Silence. The kind of silence that follows them home at night. The kind of silence that sits in the passenger seat. The kind of silence that shows up when the party's over and the music stops and their phone is quiet and there's no one left to distract them. In that silence, they hear everything. They hear your voice. They hear the things they said to you, the ones they can't take back. They remember the moment they made the choice to hurt you, and now they relive it over and over again. This is the part no one sees. No camera captures it. No post reveals it. But it's real, and it's loud, because when guilt takes root, it doesn't need words. It is the word. It speaks in memories. It speaks in dreams. It speaks in the empty spaces they tried to fill with noise. And every time they sit in that silence, they feel the weight of the heart they broke. They remember your trust, your love, your loyalty, things they didn't value when they had them. Now they sit in silence, not because they're healed, but because they have no idea how to repair what they've done. They might want to reach out. They might type the message. They might revisit your photos, your old conversations, the places you went together. But they don't press send. They don't call, because the guilt has paralyzed them. The shame has taken over. And the silence they gave you is the same silence that now punishes them. They were loud when they were lying. They were loud when they were justifying. But now the truth is too loud for them to speak over. And maybe they smile in public. Maybe they laugh with friends. Maybe they've replaced you with someone new. But even then, especially then, the silence is louder. Because what they had with you was real. What they broke was rare. And what they lost is something they can never recreate, no matter how many distractions they chase. That's the tragedy of betrayal. The betrayer always realizes the value of what they had when it's no longer within reach. But by then, they're alone with their thoughts, with their guilt, with their silence. And you've grown. You've turned your pain into power. You've turned your heartbreak into healing. You've moved from being shattered to being shaped. Because pain teaches, pain transforms. But guilt stalks, guilt decays, guilt isolates. So don't be fooled by their stillness. Don't mistake their lack of apology for lack of remorse. Don't assume their silence means peace. Sometimes silence is the only language guilt speaks. And in that silence, they hear you. every single day. The past returns, not to haunt the innocent, but to confront the guilty. Time, as we often say, is a great healer, but what we forget is that time is also a revealer. It does not simply move forward and erase. It archives, it preserves, and when the moment is right, it resurrects what was buried. This is the part most people underestimate. They assume that the past, once behind them, will stay behind, that their actions, once dismissed, will dissolve into dust. But life has a way of circling back, not to torment the blameless, but to confront those who thought they could escape the consequences of their choices. The betrayer may walk away from the moment, may shift into a new relationship, a new city, a new version of themselves. They may go years without uttering your name, without facing the weight of what they did. They might even convince themselves that what happened wasn't that deep, wasn't that serious, wasn't entirely their fault. But truth does not die just because someone stops speaking it. It waits, patient and exact, like a shadow in a room they refuse to enter. Eventually they will find themselves in a moment they didn't expect, a flash of memory triggered by something so mundane it seems harmless, a scent in the air, a phrase spoken by someone else, a location they didn't mean to pass by, and in an instant the past they've worked so hard to forget returns with startling clarity. It's not just the memory of what they did, it's the emotional truth of it, the recognition of the damage they caused and the value of what they discarded. That's the moment when the past stops being a memory and becomes a confrontation. And the confrontation is never external. No one calls them out. No audience demands an explanation. No loud judgment is cast. Instead, it unfolds entirely within. Their conscience becomes the prosecutor. Their guilt becomes the witness, and their silence becomes the sentence. The life they've built since that betrayal might still look fine on the outside, but internally something begins to crack. They start to question their own sense of integrity. They begin to doubt the narrative they've clung to for years. The justifications they once repeated like mantras now feel hollow, and the excuses sound like betrayal all over again. Not toward you, but toward themselves. This is what makes guilt so different from pain. Pain demands attention immediately. It cries out, it seeks healing. But guilt hides, it builds in silence, in subtle ways, until it reaches a critical mass, and then it collapses all at once. What they once believed was behind them now stands in front of them, unavoidable and unfiltered. And this confrontation doesn't go away after a night of tears. It doesn't disappear after a confession to a friend, because the only person they truly betrayed was the one they see in the mirror, and that mirror doesn't lie. What's cruel and poetic about it all is that while they thought you would be the one haunted, you've been healing, you've grown, you've walked through fire and emerged with stronger skin. You've learned boundaries, you've reclaimed your worth, you've seen how pain can refine the soul if you let it. While they were suppressing the truth, you were surviving it. While they were escaping the past, you were evolving through it. So when the past returns, it doesn't come for you, it comes for them. And it doesn't come with vengeance, it comes with truth. It comes to show them everything they refused to feel, the tears they never saw, the faith they broke, the presence they dismissed. It shows them what you would have given them freely had they chosen honesty instead of deception. It shows them the rare kind of love they once had access to, the kind they believed they could replace, only to learn that real things are not replaceable. In those quiet confrontations, they begin to grieve not just the relationship, but the version of themselves they lost when they betrayed someone who meant no harm. They mourn the man or woman they could have become had they walked the harder path of loyalty, maturity, and truth. They see how much of their life since then has been shaped by avoidance rather than alignment, by escape rather than courage. This is not karma in the theatrical sense. It's not a lightning strike, it's not public disgrace, it's something far more personal and far more painful. It's waking up in the middle of a good life and feeling something essential missing. It's standing in a room full of people and realizing you've never felt more alone. It's achieving success and wondering why it feels like nothing. And in those moments, the past reappears, not to torment, but to offer a question that must finally be answered. What did you do to the one who only wanted to love you? And maybe they'll apologize, maybe they won't. Maybe they'll bury the truth again, or maybe they'll finally face it. That's not your responsibility anymore. Your role was never to carry their guilt, only your growth. But understand this, they will be confronted, not by you, not by revenge, but by their own spirit refusing to let a false story be the false one. Because betrayal doesn't just hurt others, it wounds the soul of the one who commits it. And when the dust settles and the world goes quiet, they'll have to answer to the only judge that never forgets, the one inside. So let them smile, let them perform, let them pretend. But know this, the past is patient, and one day it returns, not to haunt the innocent, but to confront the guilty in ways they never saw coming.